Hi, I am live in Utah. I'm somewhere called Powder Mountain where my friend and I have just spent a fantastic weekend with some health leaders talking about how we're going to hopefully be part of the conversation changing healthcare.
Changing the world.
Changing the world, exactly. And it's a real privilege for me to be with a good friend of mine, but also someone extremely successful, Dallas Hartwig. He co-wrote The Whole 30. You may be familiar with that book. It's something that I give to a lot of my patients when I want them to start making behavior change. And Dallas, can you tell me a little bit about The Whole 30? How did that come about?
Yeah, so The Whole 30 started back in 2009,
Okay.
and it came about as started as a personal experiment of mine, where I started learning more about nutrition, learning more about how nutrition affects inflammation in the body, and played around with some stuff, and had some pretty profound changes in reduction in inflammation in my body, actually specifically in my shoulder, and put it out to people and said, hey, this was cool, I like this thing, it made a big difference for me, you could try it. And people did, and then more people did it, and then more people did it, and then thousands and thousands of people did, and we evolved and iterated the program and made it better and made it more effective, and just sort of put it up for free, and it became a really amazing behavior change tool for people. And the thing that I find interesting about it is that it's centered around nutrition. It's a 30-day elimination diet, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than eating better food. It's about literally developing awareness of your body, how specific things affect you, in this case, how food affects you, but also developing an awareness of yourself, your motivations, your emotional responses to different situations and how that connects to food, but then also kind of downstream how food affects your mindset, your sleep, your energy, inflammation, your skin quality, all these kind of different things that otherwise you just don't have the awareness of. So it's an awareness tool.
There's two things on there I'd like to talk to you about, Dallas. One of them is you said you were having shoulder pain, and to sort of help alleviate your shoulder pain, you were changing the foods you ate.
Right.
Now, I think for a lot of people who might listen to this, I think they'll find that quite remarkable that for your shoulder pain, and you were a volleyball athlete, I believe, at a very high level. Yet changing your diet changed your shoulder pain. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That was point one, and point two, I guess, which I'll come to a bit later, is why do you think the Whole 30 has been so successful? There is tens, hundreds of different elimination diets out there. Many of them are very good. But I am a huge fan of the program you put together.
Thanks.
But yeah, I'd like to really delve into why you think it's been so successful. So maybe if you could start off with the shoulder pain.
Wait, so that was my first experience with how food directly affected inflammation. So I had a long-standing inflammatory process in my shoulder. Most people would call it tendonitis. Nobody seemed to know what was going on. I was a physical therapist. I saw really good physical therapists. I saw orthopedists, and I got MRIs, and I got cortisone shots, and no one could seem to figure out how to make this get better. And so the idea to me, which I stumbled across in the literature, specifically a paper by Dr. Lauren Cordain, published in the British Journal of Nutrition, talking specifically about specific food components and how that affected aspects of your immune system. He was talking about in the context of autoimmune disease with rheumatoid arthritis, but it got me thinking. I was like, so different food things make your immune system do different stuff and can promote ongoing inflammation. I have a lot of inflammation that's been going on now for many months that no one can figure out. I wonder what happens if I change my food. And so it was just this like kind of a weirdo thing, and I just sort of jumped in and did, and I didn't even know anything about other foods. I literally only looked at the foods that he was talking about. He was talking about legumes. He was talking about some of the protein parts of legumes. So that's the only change I made.
Could you just, some of the viewers, could you just expand on what you mean by legumes? Because I think there's a few people who may not know that.
Sure. So legumes are sort of just a broad category, but it's all the different types of beans, lentils, chickpeas, all that kind of stuff. And so it's not that those things are bad things, but my experience, this is the individualized piece, right? My experience was such that when I eliminated those from my diet for a few weeks, and it was about 5 weeks, I had a dramatic reduction in my shoulder pain, changing no other part of my life. And I was like, wait, how is this the thing? Like, how did one particular dietary change in a fairly narrow range while keeping everything else the same so dramatically impact a thing that I didn't have digestive distress, you know? I I didn't gain or lose weight. Literally the change that I experienced was a reduction in inflammation in a specific part of my body. And that can be any part of your body. So one of the key principles with kind of, I think, nutrition in general is that any dietary component, anything you eat that damages or causes increased permeability in the digestive tract has the ability to kind of cause inflammation elsewhere. And that's what I was experiencing. I happened to be experiencing inflammation in my shoulder that was kind of exacerbated by some of my dietary choices. So I eliminated that and I was like, wow, this is the thing. You know, this research has actually happened. This stuff happens in the real world. It's kind of amazing.
But it's amazing, isn't it? When you read research and you apply it to yourself and you feel the benefit, then you're much more likely, I mean, I'm talking from an MD, a medical doctor perspective, you're much more likely to then talk about these things with your patients when you've experienced it. Yeah, absolutely. But one of the important things for me when I talk to my patients about elimination diets is there's really valuable, and probably the key learning tool is what I would call the reintroduction phase, which is when you step by step in a systematic fashion reintroduce one food item at a time. Dallas, did you go through that reintroduction process? And by doing that, if you did that, did you manage to localize the pain to a few foods rather than this whole elimination that you did? Maybe there was 2 or 3 foods that were contributing.
Yeah, so back in 2006 and 2007 when I was experimenting with this stuff, I didn't, to answer your question directly, I didn't reintroduce them on purpose because I was like, hey, eliminating them made me feel better. Why would I want to reintroduce them? And so for me, I had already learned, because it had that very direct effect, I had already learned that wasn't something that positively affected me. I didn't need to reintroduce those to have that because I already learned what I needed to learn. Lots of times you don't have such a dramatic improvement, and you're absolutely right that the systematic reintroduction is really key to learn those things, because if I had had a more subtle change that I didn't notice, but then when I was reintroduction, I had to like, oh wow, look at, now I learned the thing. Yeah. So the reintroduction, I think, is the most important learning opportunity. And so over the course of the years following my personal experience, that elimination reintroduction, the two sides of the same coin, we started to build it into the Whole30 program. But that's not something I knew to do at the beginning. Yeah. And I was like, wow, I learned a big thing. I'm just not going to go back to it, you know? And that's not to say that any of those food groups that we eliminate on the Whole30 or with any other elimination diet are bad or problematic or unhealthy. But once you've had a personal experience with that, I don't have to convince people of my research and say, you know, gluten is bad or dairy is bad or whatever, because if you have a profound personal experience and you've learned about how it affects you as an individual, then you know, and you know forever. And that's, to get to your second question, that's one of the reasons why the Whole30 is so powerful, because people learn things about themselves that they've never had the opportunity to learn before.
Yeah, that's really, in my experience, both personally with my family, but as a clinician as well, you can talk to people about research. You can tell them, you know, what...
Here's the data.
Yeah, here's the data. But actually, what matters more than anything is that personal experience, because once you have experienced yourself, oh, every time I have highly processed bread, I get a bit of joint ache. Actually, you're empowered then to know what to do with that. If you choose to have that bread and accept the consequences,
absolutely,
I'm absolutely okay with that, actually. But it's more about empowering people so they understand their body, so they can make the choice. And I always say to people, my job as a doctor is not to tell people to give up things or give up smoking. I've never told a patient to give up smoking. I don't feel my role as a doctor, as another human being, is to say, you must not do this.
Right.
My job, if they choose to ask me, is, well, this is what I think it's doing to you. But if you get enough enjoyment out of that to put up with the, you know, the consequences,
is it worth the consequences?
That's up to you. Totally. It's not up to me. One thing that, I mean, so we've spoken a lot about the BBC show Doctor in the House that I did last year, and one thing that the final edit was not able to show was the diabetic lady Dottie, who, you know, she was 20 stone. Which I don't know that in your job. I think it's around 240, 250 pounds, huge amount. Yeah, I diagnosed her with type 2 diabetes, and so I came up with a diet very similar to the Whole30. Actually, it was an elimination diet. The thing that the edit couldn't show, although there was huge weight loss, there was a reversal of type 2 diabetes, within 3 days, actually no, it was within 2 days of her eliminating what I would call pro-inflammatory foods, her ankle pain, her knee pain, and her back pain completely disappeared. This is pain that she'd been told by a doctor was degenerative arthritis. And she was like, hey, Dr. Chatterjee, I've changed what I eat, and I'm not getting pain anymore.
Right.
I don't need to persuade her anymore.
Absolutely.
She's bought in.
Yeah, I didn't, like, I learned the thing, she learned the thing, right? And there's not, like, you don't have to throw research at people, and you don't have to try to convince them. When they have that powerful personal experience, then they know because they felt it themselves.
Why 30 days?
30 days for a couple of reasons. So there's sort of, from an immunological standpoint, it takes a while for the immune system to calm down, for the inflammation to start to subside. So she'd have a difference in, she had a difference in symptoms. I had a difference in symptoms very rapidly. But if you have an intolerance or sensitivity to a specific food, it sometimes takes 2 or 3 weeks to really have that inflammation start to subside. So that's sort of a minimum. And 30 days it's a bite-sized chunk. You can wrap your head around it. Actually, it's just a convenient number, frankly, that makes good sense. And you can do anything for 30 days.
Yeah.
You can do anything for 30 days.
In your first book, It Starts With Food, I seem to remember a page where you very concisely and I wouldn't say aggressively, in a very, very sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tough love.
Tough love, exactly. Say, this is not hard.
Right.
Okay, you sort of detail what is hard in life, and actually...
Well, I think that's one of that's definitely one of the most quoted lines from that book and from the Whole 30 program. And we talk about, like, beating cancer is hard, quitting heroin is hard, birthing a baby is hard, going without cream in your coffee for 30 days is not hard. And reframing that and giving people context, I'm like, this is actually a thing that you can do. Like, you can do this. We all have dealt with things harder in our life than dealing without coffee or dealing without cream or coffee for 30 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I find going without coffee quite hard, actually.
But sorry, I corrected myself. I didn't say going without coffee for 30 days.
Coffee and cream. But that's if we can move it on. So Whole 30's been around for a while. It's doing its thing out there. But I'm very interested in what you're getting into these days.
Yeah.
So we had a panel discussion yesterday with Kelly Brogan about behaviour change.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that you are really delving deep into at the moment, about what makes it easier to facilitate behaviour change. Because fundamentally, in the space that we occupy, a lot of what we ask our patients, our clients, our friends to do is fundamentally change behaviours that are often ingrained in. I know a lot of people watching this will have some unhealthy behaviours that maybe have changed or tried to change before,
and they've stuck.
And they're stuck or reverted back. So, I know you're very interested in behaviour change. You've spoken to a lot of world experts about that recently. And I know that you had just launched a podcast yesterday, the Living Experiment.
The Living Experiment, yeah.
Which I believe, I've not heard the first episode yet. I look forward to doing that. But can you maybe talk about some of the obstacles to behaviour change and what you're getting into these days?
Yeah, so my interest really is in removing roadblocks for people to make positive changes. And change is hard, We're creatures of habit. We like structure, we like organization, we like familiar things. And even if it's a good positive change, it's a hard thing to do, to upset that balance. And so, the Whole 30 is a behavior change program, and in giving people resources that, in distributing it for free, in giving people lots of supportive resources, online community connection, community support, accountability, those are all things that make people more likely to succeed. And I think that's fascinating because I actually had no background in behavior change or psychology or any of those things. No. But I spent 10 years in clinical practice as a physiotherapist. And so that behavior change, speech and habit, like, it was ingrained in me as a clinician. And so I kind of just knew how to, I guess, intuitive and experience to kind of how to do that. And
there were 3 pieces, right, to the puzzle that you were talking about yesterday.
Yeah. So really, behavior change happens when you combine motivation,
number 1, motivation,
with the ability, with the right trigger, and that's B.J. Fogg's research out of Stanford. That's something that he organized, and it very much resonates with me because it's exactly what we did with the Whole 30.
Motivation, ability, trigger. Those
all
3
three have to be present.
Okay.
So if you have, and we'll just talk through an example, if you're very motivated to change, and I come to you and I say, I have a program, I'm going to help you exercise, it's $500, and you don't have $500, you don't have the ability to do that.
Sure.
Or if I say, you should exercise, here's this free information, but I deliver it badly. It's not spoken in a voice that resonates with you, or I'm going to trigger you to do that change. So there's all of these pieces have to be present with the same person, in the same place, the same context, because you're a father, I'm a father. Before we were parents, we viewed the world differently. And so the context dramatically changes. So our values, the things we do changes differently. So even the same person in a different context requires a different set of motivation, ability, trigger, which
Yeah.
I find fascinating. It also makes it maddeningly complex to help people change because you've got a ton of factors in different points in time and everyone's different and all these different things, but I love that challenge. And so my work now is focused on how do I take what I've learned from building the Whole30 program and learn from experts in behavior change and spread that out across different programs in different domains of life, of exercise, of sleep habits, of food, of the way we connect with humans, in a social sense, and build a suite of products, build a suite of programs that help people start at the right place for them. Because again, it's that identifying the right place to start, the right trigger, the right person, the right time and place. And that's an enormous problem, but I'm super excited to do it. And so the Whole30 was my warm-up.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend we've been around a lot of people who talk about behaviour change and how to engage people. And I know on the first day we had Charles Einstein here, who was it Einstein? Charles Eisenstein, who he said something that really struck me, which is, does one need to really be suffering or have a chronic disease before they're motivated enough to make the changes? And I think we can all resonate with that. I know a lot of us here have had personal experiences. You talk about your shoulder.
That's what got me started.
Yeah, I've had experiences with my own health, with my family's health, that have forced me and probably given me the motivation to move things forward. For people who are not, in extreme distress or have a chronic disease, because obviously we want to help people who haven't gone all the way up the curve into chronic disease. Is it more challenging to, for them to have the motivation? Do you need
Just trying to reconnect.
Okay. I think we're having a little technical issue. We're just trying to reconnect.
Just says your connection is weak.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
No
I think it's okay.
From a change perspective, something like some sort of epiphany or disturbance of that balance is often what prompts people to do something differently. So if you go to your doctor and you find out you're pre-diabetic and you're 20 kilos overweight and you have a sort of a health crisis, that's often enough to kind of nudge you off in the right direction. And so that would be sort of the motivation and the right trigger. A little bit of fear, a little bit of concern about the future. But for people who don't have that, it's from a clinician perspective, from a doctor's perspective, or from someone who's just interested in helping people, finding the right motivation. So it's not always fear of getting sick and dying. It's sometimes the desire to have an energetic, vibrant quality of life for decades to come, or to be around for your grandchildren, or to be more productive at work, or to have more energy and to have better mental focus and better creativity and all of these different things. So there's lots of different reasons to improve your behaviors, to do healthier things that don't require health crisis.
Yeah.
But you have to have the right motivation, ability, and trigger, right? So if I'm living a relatively good life and I don't have a significant health crisis, I have to be offered some external forces to come into my world that sort of triggers something, some self-assessment and some maybe I should do something differently, So I don't think it has to be a health crisis. Health crisis is the powerful driver of change, but it tends to be transient motivation. It's there, you're scared, it's acute, but you forget, and this happens all the time, right? We're really motivated. January 1st comes around, I'm going to start exercising, start eating better, and by April it's all gone.
Yeah,
so it's this kind of temporary motivation. And a lot of that comes down to as the situation changes, because motivation is actually very difficult to instill in somebody, to create in somebody. And that's really where my work is focusing on making things easier, by improving people's ability to be successful and to get the right prompt for them. Because the motivation does vary person to person and time to time.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly fascinating, isn't it? Thinking about all of these the ingredients that are necessary to help people.
Ingredients is a great way to think about it.
Yeah. Could you maybe just to finish off, Dallas? I know you have been working hard for a long time on your new podcast.
Yeah.
I met PY, your sort of, is it co-host?
Yeah.
Co-host. The Living Experiment, I think it's a fantastic name. Could you maybe tell me and some of the viewers a little bit about the Living Experiment podcast and what the goal is of that and what's the idea behind it?
For sure. So my co-host is Pilar Gerasimo. She's a health journalist. She's a very insightful human. So she and I have kind of teamed up to create a podcast that's about finding ways to be healthy in an unhealthy world.
Yeah, I love that.
And in doing so, in sort of swimming upstream and doing unconventional things, because the world we live in is not a world that's friendly to optimal human health.
Yeah, I agree.
And so you have to kind of question convention and do things different, because if you do everything that everyone else is doing, you end up where everyone else is. That's mostly not a really great place. So we want to give people little tools to question, to experiment in their own lives. The Whole 30 is a great example. It's a 30-day program. We're going to give people much smaller experiments, but at the end of each episode, we give them a little experiment on a specific topic that they can then go and learn about themselves. Because this whole learning about yourself, this awareness is the key to everything.
The key, yeah.
It's totally the key. So the living experiment really is a reference to in living unhealthily in an unhealthy world, you become a living experiment. So that's just we're all rolling experiments all the time.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it sort of makes me think of something I talk to my patients a lot about, which is control the environment that you can control. So I think, let's say someone's in here and I'm giving them a 1-hour consultation on lifestyle and behavior. If they go outside my front door or the office door and it's impossible for them to do it where they live, it's going to be very challenging, because the default option, I think, these days for many people is unhealthy choices. The practice I used to work at in Oldham is a very underprivileged part of the population, a lot of immigrants, a lot of people on benefits, and frankly there are very few healthy practices that are made easy for these guys.
Yeah.
And so I could give them a huge talk on nutrition, but literally they walk out the door and there are literally fast food restaurants everywhere, fries, chicken kebabs, and I know for me, if I ever forget my lunch, or when I was working there, if I ever forgot my lunch, it would be challenging to find something. And I'm a motivated individual who is very keen to look after myself. These guys are going to struggle, and I guess this really, as an offshoot, sort of fits into what you're saying. How to be healthy in an unhealthy world, and that kind of is the crux of the matter, isn't it? These days,
No, it absolutely is. And changing your environment is key. It's part of that sort of ability. So. Changing your environment by not forgetting to bring your own lunch.
Yeah.
Things like that where you're actually affecting what's going on around you. You're altering your ability to do that healthy behavior. And a lot of it comes down to planning and preparation. It really does.
When I challenge my patients to change their kitchen, change their internal environment, because getting a coffee these days, for example, you go to a coffee shop. I don't know what it's like here in the US, but in the UK, you can walk along and as you're queuing, you will be walking past the muffins,
Just the same.
the croissants,
Just
the biscuits.
Yeah.
And so let's say you have self-restraint and you decided to say no. You go to the barista and you order your coffee and they will say to you, "Oh, would you like a chocolate croissant with that, sir?"
Yeah.
And we know that's not by accident. We know that is by design.
Very much so.
And so what I say to my patients is, out there, your willpower will be called upon. Don't use up your willpower in your home environment. Make sure that is as clean as possible. And I think I read somewhere that we have a limited reserve of willpower.
Yeah.
You may know, I don't know if you're delved into behavioral sciences. Have you come across that concept before?
Yeah, so willpower is a finite resource. You
Yeah.
have a fixed amount, and you can spend it lots of different ways.
Exactly.
You can spend it with not yelling at your children. You can spend it at...
One person said they can't hear.
Oh, they can't hear. Okay.
Okay, we're having a slight technical issue. Maybe we'll see if we can get the camera a bit closer. We'll come a bit closer.
We'll
speak louder.
Yeah, we'll speak louder. But yeah, so that willpower is that finite resource, and so if you have a hard time saying, "I'm not going to eat the cookies and the cake at home," and then you spend some of that resource there, then by the time you end up out for lunch or at the coffee shop, then it's harder because of that offering is still there. You just, at some point, depending on the environment, you can often run out of that willpower, and that's when you make an unhealthy choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dallas, look, it's been really fun chatting with you. Can you tell me what the Living Experiment, the podcasts, are they coming out every week? They're out.
They're out, absolutely. So you can go to livingexperiment.com. The podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud and several other platforms. But find us at livingexperiment.com. We're on Instagram at Living Experiment Podcast. You can also check out my work at dallashartwig.com and send us feedback, send us suggestions, make it better, because we're new. We're trying to figure out how to do this thing. So help us make it better.
Well, yeah, let us know on this page or on Dallas's page or the Living Experiment page what you'd like to maybe talk about in the future. Dallas and myself and James Maskell, who is the founder of Functional Forum, who really has put on this event this weekend. We are all doing a bit of traveling together for the next little while, a road trip to really sort of unplug. But the irony of that is we're going to plug back in. I think this Saturday coming, we'll let you know the exact time. We're going to have a more extensive Facebook Live interview. Me, Dallas, James Maskell. We're going to have a conversation, a chat, anything you want us to talk about.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. We'll try and cover them for you. So, yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.